two young men, let us assume the first person's name is Jack and the second person's name is Jim. They were two religious person, and Jack asks Jim that can we smoke while we pray? So Jim asked Jack, why don't you go to the priest and ask? So Jack went up to the priest and asked, oh priest, may I smoke while I pray? Obviously, the priest told, no, no, my dear son, it is totally out of the way. It is beyond our religious practice. Jack came back and told Jim what priest answered. Jim told, well, let me try, because it depends upon the way you ask. So Jim went to the priest and asked, priest, may I pray while I smoke? And the priest answered, yes, yes, for sure. Go ahead. The moral of this conversation is basically the way you communicate and the way you talk, and rather the way you put forward your questions. Today we have with us someone very special. I would like to tell a few lines before I introduced her. In her words, or rather what I would say, she has seen a newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. I saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a white ladder all covered with water. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. I hope you all can recall these are the great historical lines from Bob Dylan from his famous song, Where Have You Been, My Blue-Eyed Son? We have with us today somebody who is a US citizen, Devi Hinshaw. She has worked in British Airways New York, Hutchison Whampoa in Hong Kong. Currently, he is employed as the director of Elios Renewable Energy Limited, which is in London, United Kingdom. She has been into various coaching, mentoring, especially in terms of communication. She has lived across and sailed across in several countries, including US, Paris, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Oman, and London. And that is why I quoted the lines from Bob Dylan, which is very much applicable to the kind of personality she has. We welcome Devi Hinshaw, who is joining directly from her home in Bangalore. In her own words, the entire world has taught her to mainly things firstly with the world that is round, and we are just only 6 degrees apart. Welcome, madam. A very warm welcome from Asian College of Teachers. We welcome you to this Facebook live show on positive communication.
Thank you, Shaunak. Thank you for introducing me. I just wanted to add to you that I wanted to say hello to all the participants and to tell you that we're going to talk about positive communication. But before we do that, let me tell you that I also worked for Citibank and for Chase Manhattan Bank in New York. So I've got corporate communicative skills as well. And today we're going to do just a small bit of positive communication, because it's such a large topic that maybe Mr. Shaunak will do it in segments and cover the topic, because the topic is very large. But we would like you to participate, for all the participants who are there, and any questions that you have, please bring it to the forum and we will certainly answer them.
Yeah, so coming directly to what Madam has told, so just wanted to inform all of the students or the participants of the audience who is hearing us that she has been into particularly into multinationals. So the communication or the mode of communication has been multifarious. So I hope that the participants will be asking something very relevant questions, and I think that it would be an enriching discussion that we are looking forward. So ma'am, my first question would be, as the title defines positive communication, and generally what we do is that we communicate with each other. So can you point out any significant difference which marks between communication and positive communication?
Well, to give you an example, communication can be direct and flat. I consider it flat. You can say, sit down, okay? Or you can say, sit down. And in altering your tonal quality, you are infusing a friendship to the other person whereby they react better. Sit down merely says sit down, but sit down is an invitation. So there are things like that where your tonal quality and the way you phrase yourself can actually make a difference to what you say and convey a positive note to the other person, whereby they react more positively to you and you build a connect between each other. Yes?
Right.
So
Right.
give me another one, what you would like.
What you told rightly is that means how can we, so obviously what comes forward is that, as you told, sit down and sit down. So in case of changing the voice intonations, we actually change even the meaning what we are trying to communicate. In general, we are not aware. We generally don't use those intonations when we are speaking to people. So what would you suggest, that how can we be aware and how we can use those intonations at every point when we are talking to anybody? Like, it can be corporate communication or even personal communication. Is it a habit that we need to inculcate, or what?
Yes, we need to indoctrinate ourselves into improving our internal and external relationships with people. And then only will there be growth. Growth in relationships, growth in what you want from the other person, what you're seeking from the other person, because he will react or she will react more positively to you. And 99% chances are that you will get a positive response, instead of somebody backing off and saying, well, maybe I don't want to enter this one. So that
Okay.
is one of the things. And then you have to access situations so that it's helpful. You have to access situation. For example, if you're going for an interview, if you're at an interview, you have to access the situation. You have to see who you're addressing and what their needs are that you can address, so that you can bring forth your strengths, so that you are addressing their needs, so that you are the candidate they're looking for. These are things that will help in communication and positive communication. I would say that you've got to be supportive of your environment. And in order to be supportive of your environment, you have to be curious about the other person or persons. And in showing curiosity, you animate them into wanting to know about you more. And in wanting to know about you more, there is a bridge that you build between each other. And that's another key point in communication. And well, there are lots of other things, listening, for example, is one of them. Listening is a
Right.
key point, because if you listen to the other person, what you're doing is you're giving them the respect. Aside from understanding what they require or what they want or what they want to communicate to you, you are giving them that respect, which you will inherently receive from them in return.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
so
We have listed listening. Definitely, we will come to that part. I would like you to talk on listening, because that is an integral part. So, as you rightly told, that when we are talking this voice. So, for example, especially for our students, when they're going for an interview, they're quite aware about the way they communicate. How can we do it? Because as you understand, charity begins at home. So if we are not building up right from our personal day-to-day talks, then that voice and intonation and the pitch of that voice won't come. So what would you suggest to be the steps that we can aware right from our home till we move into our corporate life?
well, there is things like nonverbal communication, which
Okay.
means your body language, the way you present yourself, the way you
Mhm.
sit down, the way you compose yourself. You take
Mhm.
control of your stress levels. You control your
Mhm.
stress levels, because when you're going for an interview, 99% you're stressed out. You don't know whether you're going to be successful or not. So your stress levels, your understanding, in order to compose yourself to give them what they are looking for. And in doing that, you will have to take emotion control, stress management. You will have to do your body language, sit the right way. There are some conformities that you have to adhere to when you go to a formal setup. When you go to a formal setup, you do want to compose yourself to the point where you're dressed right. That's nonverbal communication also, that you're dressed for the reason that you're going, for the occasion. You have to be dress appropriate. You cannot go wearing, now I know the IT segment has really broken all those norms because they operate with jeans, they operate with t-shirts.
Absolutely.
That was not so before IT came on the scene. But when you go for an interview, don't go dressed as such, because it will give the wrong impression to the other person who's interviewing you across. That means you haven't given them the respect that is due. So what you're saying to them is that I'm terrific. I can dress the way that I want to. I've come here to sell my skills, not my dress. But dress is a component part of your skills. It's a part of nonverbal communication as well. So that I would say that, and that might help a lot of people who are in the job market, and especially with COVID and Corona, a lot of people have lost their jobs or looking for alternate professions, or are looking to build something for themselves so that they get remunerated to lead their lives, because it's a difficult period of time, and it's going to carry on. It's going to be there for years to come, because this virus is, as you know, all of you know, it's mutating and it's taking, various shapes and sizes and forms and different symptoms and stuff like that. However, we won't cover that. But what I'll say is that another thing that you have to be careful of when you're communicating is that you're concise, because brevity is the soul of invention, discretion. You can say many things, but clarity and brevity. Be clear of what you're saying, or what skills you're selling, or who you're speaking to, and be concise. Say as much as is required of you, not more than what is required of you.
Okay.
Confidence is another thing, that you have to emanate confidence. You have to show them that you can take on this position without having to get stressed out about it or be nervous about it or unsure of yourself. So confidence is a very, very important non-verbal communicative skill.
We already have an important, very, I would say, apt question coming from Mr. Suman. I was about to question you, but it is good that he actually has perceived something earlier. What are the negative words to avoid to make your communication positive?
For starters, no. No is a key word. That is a no. Okay. Then you never say that you can't do it. Can't is another negative.
Okay.
Cannot or can't, whatever way you want to say it. If you're in Americanese, you'll say can't. If you're speaking classical English, you'll say cannot. But cannot is not required. Most times you do not require that word. And sometimes the English language has given us so much of flexibility that it's given us words that we don't need to use in certain forums. Okay, no, can't. Then I would say, I'm trying to think of other words that not coming to mind right now, but do not. I do not do this. Okay, and then there is words is. There are things like, I'll tell you, where you say, I do not understand. you try to understand, you ask the question. It is never forbidden to ask a question. So if there is something that is not comprehensible to you, then you will go ahead and say, can you run that by me again, please? So that, you understand it better. Instead of saying, oh, I didn't understand that. You do not say, I didn't understand that. Because, again, it's a no-no. It's a corporate.
I think what you're trying to point out, that in case, say, for example, on interview, which I generally tell to our ACT students, that when you are being asked this question, tell me what are your, I would say, what are your negative things? I would say, what are your the things that you don't like, right? Your positive and negative. I think that if you tell about your shortcomings, you always back up with what you're doing in order to overcome that shortcoming. What you rightly told, that I cannot do it or I cannot understand, rather I'm trying to understand. So yeah, so I think this is one very important thing I would like to bring attention to the audience. Clarity and brevity, point number one, what Madam has pointed out. And let us not use those negative words, cannot, could not, can't, not possible, because that, instead of that, using it or paraphrasing it in a different way. So I would also, we have another question coming up. So I would, it's wonderful because this is.
Did I answer Mr. Chakravarti? Was he happy with the answer? Because I'm very curious to know what he thought. What was he thinking? A line, akin to what I was saying, or is there some more clarity that he needs?
I think we will get the answer. In the meantime, it is good that I'm feeling quite excited that within the 15 minutes of the show, there are great questions coming up. So Mr. Sanjeev is asking, thanks, madam, for joining us and accepting our invitation. Okay, so Mr. Suman has already replied. Thank you for your answer. So
You're
that's
welcome.
it. So. So Mr. Sanjeev is asking, thanks, ma'am, for joining us and accepting our invitation. I would like to know what will be good positive communication when teachers using that in classroom to address students aged between the range of 6 to 16.
Well, the way that you communicate with 6 to, I would say, 10 is mildly different to what you would say from 12 to 16.
Okay.
Because you find their own communication is going to change over that period of time. A student who is 6 to 10 years old, or thereabouts, 11, 12, I would go as far as that, would be more formal when they address a teacher. They come with an inbuilt respect that they give the teacher. Today's world has changed vastly. So 12 to 16, you will find the level of communication very different. So you have to exercise positivity. Now, there is a lot of things that 12 to 16, they go through transformations in self-worth, how they value themselves, what they think of themselves, how other people are perceiving them, which the younger children do not have. They don't come with those inbuilt, I would say, thoughts about how they evaluate themselves. But 12 to 16, if it's girls, they're meeting boys. They want to know how they figure out in the boys forum, and boys similarly with girls, or within their own setup, they start competing with each other and they get aggressive. There's a quantum of aggression that creeps in, and this can display, and also a lot depends on your family backgrounds. So much depends on maternal and paternal influences, and if you have, siblings that you interact with, and sibling jealousies, hence, so you've got to be so much more sensitive. Sensitivity is one of the quotients that you have to use in communication when you're communicating with this age group, because this is an age group where you can go off the rail very easily. You can actually, if you are not made to feel valid and relevant, you can actually react negatively and really go off the rails, and then rebel. There's a rebelliousness. So I would say that there are two different segments of children, and these two segments of children, the younger children don't come with these biases, while as the older children develop biases. They don't come with it, but they develop biases because they're constantly in competition with each other. I hope that, Neil, I hope that addresses some of the questions you wanted to ask, or you asked.
Right. I think sir already has got the answer. We have got another question flowing in. As we know that this is something which cannot be quantified, effective communication. Vishakha is asking, is there a way we can measure or assess effective communication? I think it is a question of quantifying something which we cannot quantify.
You cannot quantify communication. You can quantify it in absolute terms of good or bad, okay, or dubious, okay, or nothing. But I don't think you can quantify, Vishaka. I don't think you can quantify other than good, bad, indifferent, or I would say indifferent. Yeah, good, bad, or indifferent.
Right. My next question to you, ma'am, would be, because you have traveled across different countries around the globe, I know that human sentiments or the way we communicate in general, if I take an overall approach, it is more or less same everywhere. But have you find any difference between communication as far as I would say India is concerned, and mainly the way we communicate, if you consider be it a corporate communication or a way a person sits in front of an interview during a job. And typically, if you're going to a Western Central European culture, so is there any distinct way in which the people communicate to each other?
Yes, there is, definitely. But I would take three continents. I would take Asia, divide Asia Pacific, Middle East, and I would Middle East, okay, and Africa, and Europe, and then North America, South America. Okay, South America I will leave out because their skills are very akin to ours. Actually, when I say ours, I say Asian. Okay, they're more open-minded than we are, but they are as family-minded, and therefore the respect quotient is different. In Asia, the communication is more formal for format, where we give respect to our parents, where we give, and this is all of Asia. This is not India or Thailand or China. We give respect to age, and that defines a lot of the ways that we behave. And therefore, you will find a closedness amongst us because we don't divulge everything. As part of growing up, you will change and start feeling differently about many subjects and many topics, but not all is going to be open game for everybody. Parents are kept in the know of certain things, and they're not kept in the know of other things. This is an Asian drawback. While we are very respectful and but we're also very closed-minded about a lot of things. Europe, they're formal, like Indians are formal in their approach, and they give respect and they address each other very formally. However, they're more open-minded about certain norms in society. Some societal norms are different. North and South America, I told you, has some amount of similarity to Asians. Africa is, again, very, very similar in that format. But the Americas is completely different. Europe and America have a distinct difference. Now, I've lived in both both places. I've lived in France, I've lived in England, I've lived in Switzerland, and I've lived in North America for many, many years in New York. Okay. And
Yeah.
I consider myself in more ways than one a New Yorker, because I've lived 32 years there. But having seen the difference, it was a marked difference. Americans, they leave their homes at an early age. When they're done with high school, they leave. And therefore, they're more independent at an earlier age. And that kind of independence, which is what spurs them on to be more forthcoming, they're more aggressive, they're more open, but they're more, they have there is no filter to them. They say what they feel. There is no filter to them. So I would say that North America and America stands out as the different mode of communication. While as Europe has some similarities to Asia, and Africa has some similarities to Asia, South America has some similarities to Asians, but not America. And I hope that addresses.
Before I come to the next question, I think it is a wonderful learning what Madam told, that because you know that we are into programs where students aspire to go outside India. So when we are communicating to American, and the way wonderfully you designed this entire communication pattern, if we divide between Saudi and Central Europe, we have to keep it in mind what ma'am told, that when we are approaching to these countries, the way they communicate, just like the way I told that priest, may I pray while I smoke. So when they are communicating, we need to understand really that that is their way of communication, and there should be any difference, and we should understand really the way in which we communicate and whether that communication is reaching up to them. Suparna Sinha Datta, she has got a question. Madam, we are into online learning these days. What kind of language online teachers should use when communicating with their students?
Hi, Suparna. Suparna, I would say that there are two methods. Now, which one you choose, studying your student, where they come from, and what is acceptable to them. See, you've got to negotiate with your students. You've got to negotiate what is acceptable to them. So if they're coming from a very Anglo background, where they have had the British influence, then please, by all means, communicate with the British English as we are taught. Okay, by and large, we are taught. I have learned another quality in the workplace, Suparna. I have experienced and seen that it's more relevant to speak. I have spoken to Shaunak about this before. Americanese. Americanese has become, you use buzzwords, you use relevant keywords, you have a different understanding, you make your sentences shorter and more concise, and you can get away with non-classical English. And I would say go to that if you really want a target audience or a target market for it. Go to that, because that is the order of today. In spite of the fact that, of course, classical English and traditional English is a beautiful language, but that's for your own self-satisfaction. When you want to reach people, then do it at their level. And Americanese is today spoken worldwide in the business forums, business place. They're speaking Americanese. So it's probably more acceptable today.
Right. I think Suparna has got her answer. One thing keeps me hunting, if I may ask you, ma'am, along with other languages, whether it is German, Spanish, Italian, English, we have already started to coin certain terms, and we can see that our next generation is using. For instance, as I am WhatsApping you the message, I am SMSing you the details. Now, it might be from classical English, or it might currently stuck your ear, but you might see over the years, it becomes a coined term, which might be in Merriam-Webster dictionary maybe 20 or 30 years from
Well,
down the
not
lane.
20 or 30 years. Americans are now the largest contributors to the dictionary, to the Oxford Dictionary. They're the largest contributors today because a lot of Americanese, well, I won't call them slang because slang is negative, okay? But I'll say buzzwords or relevant keywords or short form words, okay? When you concise words and you shorten them, it's very efficient.
Okay.
It's efficient and you get to the point much faster, than if you prolong and you give classical English and you go into dialogue. Now that is different at when you're in a social environment and you want to repartee with people. But when you want to, there are many French words that have come into, repartee is one of the words that I think the world is becoming smaller. It is shrunk. We are cross-culturing each other constantly. There are words that are creeping in. Look at the words that Indians have put into the dictionary. I remember I said bungalow, jungly, then I'm trying to think of all the other words. There's so many words, thug, okay? These are all in the dictionary today. And they're contributed by, this is India's contribution to the dictionary. So the world is shrinking and becoming smaller.
In this way, are we losing the essence of English in some way?
Well, Shaunak, I have a different take on this. Of course, we're losing the concept of English. A lot of our children don't even read the classics as we used to do. And those are such beautiful things to read. However, communication is important. So it doesn't matter at what level we communicate, as long as we communicate and get to the other person. So if it means brevity, go for it. Yeah,
that's fine. Right. We have we have certain time limitations. So, but before we end, I have one important question which really affects the I won't say the quality, but in case that the candidates are facing interviews in terms of jobs like in Thailand, etc. The basic problem, which I would say as a bottleneck comes, is a mother tongue influence. And I have personally seen into this placement scenario where I get calls and people are calling news of success, I would say joy of success and anguishes on failure. I don't know if I'm using the correct English. So I know that, as you told, the siblings, culture, socio-economic contributions, they all contribute towards building a person's communication, the language. But still, because you have been into so many countries and you have contributed significantly, I would say, to the society, can you just quickly chart few measures that we from India, that I know there is a MTI even in Scotland or anywhere, but like what would be the way you would suggest to overcome a mother tongue influence?
I have a very strong notion about it, and I would like to actually address this issue very strongly. You see, mother tongue English, of course, depends on on so many things, but a lot of your target market is going to come with mother tongue English, okay? Mother tongue influence, because background, educational institutions that have been attended, and exposure are three components that will influence mother tongue influence, okay? And what I think is relevant and very important, and to come on the global forum for the group is and for people who are seeking jobs and seeking positions and things like that, very important is somehow to practice. The trainers have to be trained. The trainers have to be given training to, when they train their people, their students, that they catch these glitches at every step. So you have to really micromanage the training a little bit more. You have to micromanage because you've got to re-educate these people into speaking with the right accent, the right tonal quality, and present themselves in such a way that is globally acceptable. So I think what we need to pay attention to is training the trainers, because it's easy to give a forum and say this is the subject that you have to study it, and in this frame of time you should be able to complete it. But you've got to actually put it into practice, and practice is what we need to do. And in training the trainers to identify these glitches, then jot it down, address it, and correct it, and then have you've almost got to start from afresh with a lot of people. And that it's not good enough just to give them the matter and have them study it and say, okay, I will supervise if necessary. It is necessary to see how they are progressing, and the progress will define how successful they are eventually.
So if I may summarize what you told, what we call neutral accent English or neutral English, that actually is somehow subtly related to mother tongue influence.
Well, it isn't really, because I'll tell you, Shaunak, I have seen a lot of Indians who speak better English. Well, it's not rocket science that there are Indians who speak better English than the native English speakers. Okay,
absolutely.
But, grammatically correct English. In mother tongue, influence creeps in, and immediately there's a bias against them. This bias has to be removed. Neutral English is what you and I are speaking. This is neutral accent. Neutral accent is acceptable anywhere in the world. Yes, if you want not to be identified. I used to see this in the United States when call centers first emerged, and people would on the call line and from the banks or the back office call centers doing their job, or from medical facilities or whatever, and they would come, and immediately people would ask, are you an Indian? Because there were Indians who were doing the back office work, okay, who would so there was an immediate bias. And I've seen people reacting, saying, "Oh, you don't live here. You don't know where are you calling from? Are you calling from Bangalore? That sort of thing." And that doesn't happen to you and me, because we have neutral English. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it doesn't identify us so strongly to mother tongue.
True. Before we close down, Lakshmi Menon has got a question: how to build up confidence in kids who have an Indian accent in English when they suddenly stop replying after assessing their peers' sophisticated English? Kids with accent have good grammar, but they lose confidence in accent. They feel judged. I think quite a serious question.
Well, this is a very serious and a very relevant question. Yes, this is the time when the trainer has to approach them with understanding and negotiate with them, and keep an empathy. There has to be great amount of empathy, and you never put them down, but you teach them, say, hi, how about saying, party instead of party? Okay. How about, what I'm saying? And, say, would you like to come to my party? Not, would you like to come to my party? Okay. And teaching them this, but accepting them for who they are, not putting them down, giving them the self-respect, and making them feel valued will kick this. This is something that can be rectified, and the younger they are, the better it is to get onto these formats of ACT. These children, the parents should put them into a training like ACT is supplying, to rectify these things right in the beginning. And this is not just for people who are seeking jobs. This forum is good for children who want to learn communicative skills to help them in the future, so that they become global citizens, world citizens, and not identified as Indian or Thai or African or, Chinese or whatever. You've got to meld. You've got to actually become a melting pot, because the world is becoming a melting pot.
I think that's wonderful. And I would add whatever you told at the beginning, become a global citizen just like you. So I would like to thank, really, yeah, I understand that currently also we have got a campus drive live, which is going on in our place. So yes, we got good amount of appreciation
from Lakshmi. You're welcome, Lakshmi. But yeah. I want all the Lakshmis of the world who are listening to this to send their children to these training camps. If you have training camps that you set up in institutions and in things, so much will be rectified at an early age. And if you catch it at an early age, they will not have a problem later.
Thank you. A heartfelt thanks from my side for endorsing Asian College and the courses. Yes, we recently got a feedback that yes, whatever we are producing from ACT, it is being valued.
Thank you, Shom. Thank you, Mr. Chakravarti. I think that you've got a good response, because this is very essential, because these children, 90% of these children will be looking to the outside world. And even if they look to the inside world, you're welcome, Kuhur. Even if they look inwardly, this India itself is moving so fast. India is moving. Mr. Modi has made it such a global forum. He's bringing in so many things that I feel so happy to be back in India. After 32 years overseas, I'm seeing changes that are really, they're not marching ahead, they're galloping ahead. And very soon, this is the superpower. India is the superpower. So you've got a great forum. And thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your kind words. It was a delight to hear from you. And as you have already told before, that Indian speaks the best English. And from Asian College of Teachers, we are trying to bring that right in front.
Thanks, Priyanka.
Yes, a lot of appreciations, ma'am, coming across, flowing around. We have restriction in terms of time. So, yeah. Thank you very much, and we won't let you go. I can promise you this much, ma'am. This is Shaunak. You are hearing Devi Hinshaw, a global citizen, US native, 32 years, coming back to India, and she can see that India is galloping forward, not only marching. We from Asian College of Teachers will always endeavor and try to bring the best, thereby serving our country. This is Shaunak signing off from Facebook Live. Thank you, madam. Thank you from the entire family of Asian College of Teachers for joining with us.
Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.